Hello and good evening, everyone. I'm Nancy Yap, Executive Director of CAUSE. Thank you for joining us for Creating Our Paths, Women in Power. We're recording this event and we'll make it available to the public afterwards. This webinar also has English subtitles and live transcript options on the bottom of your Zoom tool. Creating Our Paths is part of the CAUSE Leadership Institute, a leadership and advocacy training program for professionals with seasoned experience and a passion for serving the Asian and Pacific Islander community. Tonight's program includes interviews with Congresswoman Young Kim and Treasurer Fiona Ma, and a panel with Irvine Vice Mayor Tammy Kim and CAUSE board members Tammy and Tammy Tran. Before we begin, I do want to take a moment to thank the CAUSE sponsors. First, thank you to the CAUSE Leadership Institute sponsors, Centene Foundation, Southern California Edison, Southern California Gas Company, and Walmart. I also want to thank additional CAUSE program sponsors who support all of CAUSE's programs, including the JT Tai Foundation, Charlie Wu, Annenberg Foundation, East West Bank Foundation, the Glassman Family Fund, Stand With Asians, Unibail Rodamco Westfield, Asian Pacific Community Fund, and Southwest Airlines. Now for our first interview. It's my pleasure to introduce Congresswoman Young Kim, who will be interviewed by CAUSE board member Tammy Tran. Congresswoman Kim represents California's 39th district in the U.S. House of Representatives. This district includes parts of Los Angeles, Orange, and San Bernardino counties. She is an immigrant, small business owner, community leader, and mother. She is proud to be one of the first Korean American women ever to serve in Congress. Prior to serving in Congress, she was the first Korean American Republican woman to serve in the California State Assembly. She started her public service as Director of Community Relations and Asian Affairs for former Congressman Ed Royce. Tammy Tran is a CAUSE board member and the Senior Manager for Community Engagement, Local Public Affairs at Southern California Edison, one of the nation's largest electric utilities. Tammy also serves as the president of Edison's Asian Pacific Islander Employee Resource Group. She has over 15 years of experience working in government, election campaigns, media, and grassroots nonprofit organizations. And now I'll hand it over to Tammy Tran.
Young, you and I have known each other for 20 years, and so I'm really happy to be talking today about women in power. And I know for you, because I've seen it for 20 years, public service is a way of life. It's a calling for you. It's something that you love to do, and you just shine when you do it. I personally know that because you've been, you serve the area that I live in, Little Saigon. So yes. Before you ran for office, can you share how you got started in government as a staffer and as a community leader who had her own radio program or television program?
You remember that, right? Yes. I was, working as, in Ed's office. I had my television talk show for almost like 10 years. I was a television talk show host. But, first of all, let me say how great it is for me to be with you. And I want to also extend my welcome and greetings to everyone joining us today. And I heard that my good friend, Treasurer Fiona Ma, and Irvine's Vice Mayor Tammy Kim will be joining us later, and you will get to hear from them. So I'm very, very delighted to participate in today's Women in Power leadership series. So thank you for having me. And Tammy, you're right. You and I go back like decades. So you are a young girl, and I was a young girl, and I'll continue to be a young girl since my
yes, you are.
No, but during my days in college, which was USC, I was involved in various activities on campus. I think I studied accounting as my major, so I was very active in the accounting society. And but I was also very involved with Korean American Student Association, KASA, and also with KAC, which is Korean American Coalition. This is a nonprofit organization that was founded in early 1980 while I was still in campus, founded by 3 leaders, one of whom is my husband, Charles Kim, who later became my husband at the time, after I graduated. So just like CAUSE, KAC, its mission is focused on community advocacy, leadership training, political empowerment, And over time, it has grown to almost 20 chapter offices in major cities throughout the United States. And I was on the board and served as the president of the Orange County chapter. And while I was doing the community advocacy work, it was actually in early 1990 when I met Ed Royce. And it was through my husband, Charles. And at the time, Ed was a state senator, and I had just given birth to our second daughter, and I was staying home, getting ready to return to work. But after my initial meeting, Ed Royce asked me if I would join his team and help him with community outreach. So before I knew it, I was calling his district director and told her that, Senator Ed Royce asked me to call you. And the next thing I know, just come on board. And I started immediately. So I started in his district office in the state Senate, and then I stayed with him when he ran for Congress in 1992. And as you know, I worked in his congressional office for a total of 21 long years.
That's great. During that time, afterwards, you ran for office. What was it, a part of that experience that kind of prompted you to run for state assembly and now for Congress?
Yeah, I first ran for state assembly in 2014. At the time, my husband, Charles, really encouraged me to seek that office because after we saw in 2012 in Orange County, losing a Republican seat to a Democrat, they felt that, oh my God, we need to have some candidate and run and try to put that back in the R column. And also my former boss, Ed Royce, he really encouraged me. And so, remember that time I ran against a well-funded incumbent, and I won for the first time and became the first Korean-American Republican woman to serve in California state legislature, especially from Southern California, from the Asian community, from Orange County. I believe I was the first. Then in 2018, Ed Royce announced that he was going to retire at the end of that term. Shocker to everybody because I personally did not anticipate it. But when I heard that, I decided to go for it. Having worked closely with Ed, being a key liaison to that 39th district, having raised my 4 wonderful children in the district. And I feel that this is my community. This is a community I know. I know the pulse of the community. I know what their needs are. I knew in my heart I can continue to provide the representation that the people of 39th district did come to know and appreciate. So while it was a very close race in 2018, and it was heartbreaking for me and my family and everyone who really supported me, I stayed involved in the community. And the policies that were coming out of Washington at the time, I knew I had to give it one more try. So I ran in 2020, and here I am.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you here, Young, especially for you to share how you got your start as a student in community activism. And many of the folks that are part of this program, our Cause Leadership Institute, are at that age. They're gonna meet their partner in life, just like you met Charles, and hopefully they'll run for office too. Young, if you could talk a little bit more about how you've been the first at many things. You're the first Korean women, probably district director, and you're the first of 2 Korean American women in Congress. Can you share a little bit about what your background looks like, and how your upbringing and the experiences that you had kind of shape who you are as a API woman in public service and politics?
It's really humbling experience for me as an immigrant and as a mother to be serving and walking the halls of Congress and serving as one of the 435 members throughout the entire country. I mean, this is really a humbling experience, and I take it very, very seriously. But as immigrants, I think you and I and many of us who are watching us right now, I think serving our community and giving back to this country that has given us so much opportunity, it's naturally embedded in our DNA. Giving back is our DNA motto.
Absolutely.
So faith has always been my guiding principle. My mom was a strong woman of faith, and she taught me valuable lessons early on. And my family, let me tell you a little bit about how we came to Guam. Actually, Guam is where we first arrived. And I always think back to helping my mom, going down to the beach, she's telling me pick up cans and bottles on the beach. And I thought it was just an act of cleanup. And, because on the weekends, a lot of people go to the beach and they party and then leave all the debris and trash all over the place. So I thought I was just helping her and just obediently picking up cans and bottles. But what she would do is go and recycle what we collected. And any money we made, we donated that to our church. Later, I learned that those small acts have contributed to building our very own Korean Presbyterian church on that island of Hwang, and it still stands. And to this day, on the campaign trail or in the community, I'm beginning to learn more about the small group of people that have come through Guam, now residing here in Southern California, and especially my Korean community. There are oftentimes people would come up to me and say, I know your mom.
Oh.
That really warms my heart. So you see, from that very humble beginning, now being able to represent and serve the community I call home for decades and serving as a member of Congress, it really shows that the American dream is real and it's very much alive.
That's such a great story, Young. I mean, thank you for sharing about your mom. You're also a mom, and you talked about how you had your second daughter, and you're a mother of 4?
Yeah.
You're a mother of 4. So that's a huge job to be able to raise four successful kids here in the United States. Can you talk a little bit about how being a mom has shaped you as a public servant and how it informs your work every day as a member of Congress?
I always say that if I can raise my 4 kids and they turned out okay, I can handle anything. Tammy, you have kids, you are a multitasker. Seriously, throughout my life, I have taken challenges head on. There were ups and downs, and I've gone through the campaigns. I won some, I lost some, I never gave up. Always found a way to work through them. If there was a stumbling block in front of me, I try to run through it instead of trying to find ways to go under, over, or underside. Seriously, I was actually born in the year of the tiger too, so I'm known as a tiger mom. We women are naturally, as mothers, we are creative. We are consensus builders. We are multitaskers. We know how to get things done. Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
I've taken this mindset when I went to State Assembly in Sacramento and now as a member of Congress in Washington, D.C., to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to get through the partisan gridlock and find common ground to bring results for the people that I represent. And I found, despite what appears to be dysfunction in Washington or dysfunction in Sacramento, there are many number of people that went to Washington, that went to Sacramento to do the right thing for the right reason. So I'm trying to always be positive and find things that unite us rather than divide us.
Great. Well, this series is called Women in Power. And so I'd love to hear more from you about how you differentiate between formal and informal power. You have power in your position formally as a state assemblywoman and now as a member of Congress. What are ways that others like myself who may not be in elected office still have influence and create impact?
First of all, let me humbly say that I know I'm here as one of the first Korean American women in Congress because of the generations of women who came before me and fought for people like me to have a seat at the table and our voices be heard. You don't need to be an elected official to have an impact in your community. Find an issue or projects that you're passionate about. Join Cause. It's a great organization. There are many other groups like KAC in my case. There is Taiwanese American Leadership Organization. There are many groups. Just look around and ask what you can do to be a part of making a difference in our community. Just be confident, speak up, and get involved. I think those of you who are attending today's seminar or webinar are doing the right thing. Find mentors, network, learn from others, and don't be afraid to ask for advice. And most importantly, never, ever give up.
Thank you, Young. And I think that never give up is so important, especially during these very difficult times. We're still fighting COVID-19. There are some things that have changed about how we interact. I mean, you and I are not able to be in the same room together, but we're still making a connection. So there are some things that were true before the COVID-19 environment, and there are some things that have changed about our society, about how we come together. Can you share about what you have learned about this year, about yourself, and how you reflect on all the things that have happened, both bad and good, and things that you're trying to overcome as you look towards 2020, the rest of the year and beyond?
As you said, COVID-19 pandemic really showed each of us, regardless of who you are or where you come from, that anything can happen. Mm-hmm. And pandemic has hit each of us very, very hard, at home, in businesses, and all across the United States, especially businesses. But the silver lining for me was being able to spend more time at home with my husband, Charles. I mean, for the last several years, it seems like I've always been constantly running for office, or when I was in office, always traveling back and forth. But through it all, I wonder if I ever stopped to appreciate my husband, who's really sacrificed a lot to support me and put Asian woman in front of an Asian man. That's hard to do for Asian.
That is very hard to do.
But he's always been there, pushing me from behind, pulling me from front, and always walking side by side, giving me the encouragement I needed. And so that during that COVID last year in 2020, despite how difficult it was during the campaign trail, we took the time every single day. We went on the walks every single day. While doing it, we also remember the picking up cans and bottles and doing the recycling. He would always refine-tuned the golf clubs, since we couldn't even play golf anymore. So he sharpened the bottom, and then he used it as a pickup sticks. So we pick up trash on the streets while we're hiking. So we continue to do what my mom told me. But now that more people are vaccinated, and now we're going back to work, although we have a new mask mandate and so forth, but that's another issue right here. But now that I'm serving in Congress, I'm traveling back and forth to Washington and meeting with people. When I come back home, I want to make sure that I don't take spending those quality time with my family for granted. Family should always come first. And it's been a rocky start for not just me, but all of us starting this new 117 Congress, the way we started in January. I mean, it's been very challenging. But through it all, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of people in Washington and Sacramento serving our communities for the right reason. So please do not be discouraged. I've learned one thing. It's really humbling experience to do what I do. And I will always, always remember where I came from, what my roots are. And I will never forget the first time I ran, and the joy and the honor and the privilege I felt representing my community. So I will always be true to myself and always try to find common ground, work in a bipartisan way, as I've shown so far. I'm really happy to tell you that I've been named the most bipartisan freshman among all freshman class in this Congress so far. And Axios has named me based on my work, the legislation that I introduced, and everything put together. So I'm very, very thankful for that. And that's exactly what the community needs. And that's what I promised. And I will continue to deliver for the district and the people that put me to Washington.
Well, thank you, Young. I've seen you, fight for our communities, all of our communities, not just the API communities, but all of our communities in Orange County for many years. And you are the same beautiful person that you were when I first met you, helping my father with his naturalization process that you are doing today as a member of Congress. So thank you for that. What I wanted to do maybe is to close out on one, you've given so much advice to our Leadership Institute today. Can you share one key advice that you would give to someone, following us today of what they need to do or keep in mind as they pursue leadership. So a particular leadership role in government, in business, or in the community, what would be that one thing that they should keep in mind, according to Congresswoman Young Kim?
Regardless of what industry you're in, regardless of what profession you're in, whenever there is an opportunity for leadership conferences like this one, attend it, participate, raise your hand and ask questions. That will leave a lasting impression. If you sit there quietly intake the information that is being shared with you, you may walk away with learning something about it, but you're not leaving an impression. And especially with the speaker, if you want to connect with them. Mentorship is really important, as I mentioned. So now that I'm in a position that I'm in, I really emphasize mentor-mentee relationships. So if you're looking for a mentor, feel free to knock on my door. More importantly, very important short piece of advice: get involved, take risks, go for it.
Great. That's a great way to end. And I'll just recap what you said earlier. Family is always first.
Family first, God first. Yes. Yeah. And don't ever forget your root, where you come from.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Young Kim. It's so great to see you and connect with you. I can't wait to see you back here in Orange County in person.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you so I can give you a big bear hug.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do, right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Kim and Tammy Tran. Next, I'd like to introduce California Treasurer Fiona Ma, who will be interviewed by CAUSE board member Tammy Bowie. Treasurer Fiona Ma is the 34th California State Treasurer. She's the first woman of color and first woman certified public accountant elected to the position. California is the world's 5th largest economy, and Treasurer Ma is the state's primary banker. As treasurer, she works closely with the state legislature to ensure that members show the state's financial condition as they consider new legislation and gives recommendations for the annual budget. Prior to serving as state treasurer, Fiona Ma served as an assembly member where she authored 60 bills that were signed into law by 2 different governors. Tammy Bowie serves as a CAUSE board of director and is currently senior government affairs manager for Turo, the world's largest peer-to-peer car sharing marketplace. Tammy has community and government affairs experience in private and public sectors. She previously served as the Associate VP of Government and Community Relations for California State University Fullerton in her hometown of Orange County. She has also served as the head of corporate philanthropy for Southern California Edison and has worked in Sacramento for several members of the California State Legislature. And now, Treasurer Ma and Tammy Bowie.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Treasurer Ma, for this amazing opportunity. I want to first start off, Treasurer, by telling you that we so often may look up to or see people we admire from afar or in passing. I've seen you many times in passing, and we don't always get to tell them just how incredible we think they are. And you are incredible, Treasurer Ma, and I want you to know how empowering it is to see a woman like you in power. I am so grateful to be able to have this conversation with you today and really shout from the rooftops just how important it is to have you in a position of power, like you have been and continue to be as the first woman of color, as the state's chief banker for the world's 5th largest economy in the world. You may not go around saying that, but you should. And you have done so much in your career in terms of the positions you've held, and more importantly, the kind of impact that you've made, whether it was on impressionable younger staffers like me many moons ago, as well as creating policies and programs to protect the environment, education, working families. And so I'd love to start off my first question, Treasurer Ma, related to leadership and to purpose. We know that leaders and leadership can come in all kinds of forms and a variety of ways. And at CAUSE, one of the things that we really believe is that there's so much room for us as Asian Americans to own this space of leadership and civic engagement, whether as a staffer or a volunteer, someone in the nonprofit or for-profit space doing policy work, and in your case, running for office. And so my question is, what made you run for office, and how did you decide, Treasurer, that that was your way of making an impact?
Yeah. So thank you, Tammy. I never thought I would be in elected office today. I am the oldest child of immigrant parents. My parents were both born in China, met in Canada, settled in New York, where I was born and raised. And then I moved to San Francisco after undergrad. And growing up, my parents wanted us to be one of the lead professions: lawyer, engineer, accountant, or a doctor. And so early on, my parents kind of brainwashed me into being an accountant. I had to, prepare their bills to pay every month. I helped them prepare their tax documents for, tax filings. I sent out checks for them. So they really prepared me for that life. And it was, easy, numbers don't lie. I was actually really good at it. But then when I got my first job, working in one of the big 8 accounting firms, there were no women or people of color in leadership. And I really didn't see myself making partner at that firm. And so I decided to quit and start my own practice and became president of the Asian Business Association. So I was 28 years old. And that was the first time that I got involved in politics. So my parents did not talk about politics growing up. We did not debate causes. Basically, it was like, how was your school? How was your day at school? Did you get good grades? It was very stuck to, what we were doing at school. So 28 years old, I have to advocate on behalf of women and small business owners. And then that was the first time I went down to the city hall in San Francisco, testified on bills in Sacramento, and started to understand that there weren't a lot of women or people of color in elected office at the time. And so you start looking around at who is making those decisions, right? Policy decisions, budget decisions. And I was with 2 mentors, Asian Inc. Harold Yee and Frank Hwang, who really wanted us to, run for different appointed position or go and try to get an appointment through the mayor's office. And so we all would apply and we all got appointed to different positions. And I think that's the best way to start to see if you really like politics. Get appointed to your local board or commission. The governor has a commitment to appoint 50% of his commissioners as women. So we're always looking for more people of color and women in the pipeline. And then after you sit on the board for 2-3 years, you get comfortable with Robert's Rules of Order, Sunshine, the Brown Act, and you start looking around at your elected officials and you start going, I think I could do a better job. And Tammy, I started out as a staffer as well for John Burton. And that's another great way of also trying to figure out, number one, your boss. Is your boss someone that you aspire to, that has good values? Are there other people around you that you're like, wow, that person is kicking butt, or I love what that person stands for. I could actually be that person because I have a story to tell, or, a platform that you want to run on. And I think that's how you can really start to decide whether you want to devote your life to public service, because once you decide to do it, it is a life calling. It's a passion. You have to want to work at it every single day. It's a 24/7 commitment. It is not a 5-day-a-week, 9-to-5 job. And so if you are committed to being public service, then that almost becomes, the priority in your life, sometimes over your own health, your own family situation, because now you are serving the people.
Thank you, Treasurer Ma. There are so many things that came to mind when you were talking, one of which is, I can relate to my parents wanting me to be, an engineer or a doctor. And so when I majored in political science, I really already failed there, right?
Right.
So I was going to ask you, because politics is not seen by many families, Asian American families in particular, as a viable career, how did your family receive that when you decided at 28 years old to do what you did? What were some of the challenges you faced, or maybe they were supportive? And what would you say to those who may not have either family or friends or a support network and know where to start. What was that for you like? And what would you say to your old 20-year-old self looking back about, what your journey has looked like and why and how you've continued to persist?
Yeah, my parents were not supportive at all. They were supportive of me being an accountant, a CPA. I had my master's in tax. They were really excited about me starting my own practice. But then when I started like pivoting and veering toward more politics, I got a job with Senator John Burton. I wanted to quit accounting. My parents said, please don't do that. Don't throw away, all of the work that you put into it. You've made us proud and now you want to throw it all away. So I worked for him for 2.5 days of the week. As I said, I got appointed to the Assessment Appeals Board. I eventually started my own Democratic Club, my West Side Chinese Democratic Club, and I used to have meetings in my living room. And so my parents, had to help host us, and then I had them participate in our endorsement committee, and they started to understand, how important it was. And they still to this day remember when Kamala Harris, when she was running for DA, she came to our living room and wanted the endorsement for our club. So slowly, they started to understand, but they weren't happy when I ran for the Board of Supervisors. They weren't really happy when I ran for the state assembly because they kind of didn't understand what that job was. And partly, I think parents want to be there to help and to guide, right? Their kids. And all of a sudden I am jumping into something that is completely foreign to them, that they could not even help or guide or provide any support because they just had no clue. So I think that's another reason I think parents don't necessarily want us to veer outside of what they actually know, and they can, provide that safety net for us. They came up to the assembly one time and I was running the floor my last 2 years as Speaker Pro Tem. And they thought it was so cool that when they came up, their names were on the banner lit up, welcome Dr. and Mrs. Ma to the California State Assembly. And they thought that was really cool, but they didn't understand all the bills I passed or what I did every day. Then when I ran for the State Board of Equalization, my dad looked it up and he's like, oh, it's a tax board. Okay, it's getting closer. But now as a state treasurer, they actually understand what the role is, and they're finally proud that I am the state treasurer for the 5th largest economy, and he's not bothering me to go back and do taxes again. So what I tell young people, your parents want what's best for you. Listen to them, respect their wishes, look for your passion, of course, what you're interested in, and then maybe 25 years later, everything has come full circle, and I'm happy, my parents are happy, and I'm finally doing a job that I feel I'm qualified to do.
Awesome. So your story about their names being lit up on that board, I totally understand that. It makes me think of a question for you related to, this concept of informal versus formal power. What I mean by that, Treasurer, is, you are in a position where your title is California State Treasurer, right? You were able to put their names on this board when you welcomed your parents. And I think so often Asian parents understand and grasp that, right? I mean, it's this
Right.
concept of what you were saying, what's unfamiliar and uncharted is super scary and not safe. And
Right.
why would you sacrifice, like you said, the stable trajectory that you had for something so uncertain, and yet you did it. And so my question to you about informal versus formal is, I always think of power as something we all have that nobody can take away from you, and that you had inside of you when you were 28 to do what you did, and then to become, to get into the assembly and then the Board of Equalization and now the Treasurer's Office. So my question is, what are ways, whether it's individuals who want to run for office and to have positional power, but also what are ways to still be of influence and still create impact, even if you're not in an elected position? What can individuals do to still be powerful, regardless of title?
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept of power usually is equated to men, right? Men want to be powerful. They want to be president. They want to be the CEO or, chief operating officer. And women, we don't think about doing something because of power. We think about a position because we can give back, because we can contribute, because we can make a difference. And I think that's the difference between men and women, especially in elected office, is that the women who run for office, it normally takes a long time to convince them. They're not always the first one that raises their hand when a city council position opens up or a school board. It's really because of circumstance, because their kids are going to school and they don't like what's happening at their school. And so they want to get more involved, and then they become the PTA president. And then they, think about, oh, well, if I was a PTA president, then maybe I should run for school board and help more people. And then it just kind of leads to the next step. I would say always be humble. The same people you see going up is the same people you see going down. And I believe you need to treat people with dignity and respect the way you want to be treated, and things happen for you. I have made so many friends and contacts and allies all over the state because of my relationships, because I want to help other people. I want to see them succeed. And if you want to get into public service, you need to like people, first and foremost. If you are an extrovert, great position. If you like change every single day, right? If you like chaos sometimes, public service, good for you. If you are an introvert, like you get exhausted when you see people and you want to just relax on the weekend and read a book and, have quiet time and just go hiking by yourself. If you don't like answering people's phone call or text messages because it's a bother for you, then this is probably not the job for you, because it is not about power here in this position. If you want to run for office and you think it's going to be powerful and you're going to make a lot of money, you're going to get into trouble very, very quickly. So that's what I tell people, like, what do you want in your life? Do you want to have a lot of houses? Do you want to have fancy cars and boats? Do you want to travel around, right? If that's the lifestyle you want, do not get into politics, because you will get in trouble very, very easily. So it has to be about people. It has to be about purpose. And it has to be about just, really wanting to help people directly and indirectly every single day.
Thank you for that. And reminding us all that in a position like yours, you have to be okay, like you said, with the chaos and the constant change, which then reminds me how I feel like this pandemic, if anything, has taught us that things can change, overnight. And or may have been working toward change, but suddenly now this pandemic really kind of hit home with regard to just the pace of change and what we have to continue to be ready for. And so what I want to ask you about is just, over the year, we've all had to shift gears, whether it's getting used to talking into these little boxes with each other this way, or me being totally comfortable, like being in tights all day, and then at night, flipping on my Netflix and being able to binge watch something just because there's nothing else to do. But I'm curious, for you, Treasurer, what have you learned this year, whether it's about yourself or as you just reflect generally on all of the change, whether it's in the area of social justice or the area of the need for civic engagement, or just a lot of the issues that have happened. What have you learned about yourself and or about our communities in general that you as you reflect back?
Yeah, so as a leader, right now I lead a 450 person agency. I am not one of 11 or one of 120 or 1 out of 5, but I am 1 out of 1. So leadership matters, especially during this pandemic time, a time of uncertainty, panic at some point, right? What is the future going to hold? Are people going to get sick? And so my chief of staff and I came into the office every day in Sacramento, Monday through Friday, because 100 of our team members also had to come into work, because we are the bank. Over $2 trillion comes through my office, and we cannot close the bank. Otherwise, the whole state of California would shut down, literally, if we did not come in and do certain things. So we came every single day just to, show that if you're coming into the office, we're coming into the office too, that we are not staying home, that we're, your life is just as valuable as our life. We're concerned about whether you're safe, and we're safe. And so leadership starts at the top. And that's what I would say to everyone who faces a difficult situation. Who do you see that is leading by example, and those who are not leading by example? And so you need to step up when there are times of crisis. Number two, we learned that over communicating is better in a pandemic, in a downturn. This is my fourth downturn in, over the last 25 years. And so I have seen that it's better to communicate more. So every morning at 8 o'clock, I had a standing call with my 3 divisions. 10 o'clock, we had a standing call with our HR and IT. 2 o'clock, we had another call about, how everybody is doing mentally, physically. Then I had another call with my deputies just to check in on, operations. And so that's what you need to do. You need to commit to communicate more often than less. And that actually alleviates a lot of the angst. And then I also learned that it's not that important that I have to show up at everything. Like if you invited me, I would come, and I would hop on a plane, come to a dinner, speak for 10 minutes, get on a plane and come home. And I'd be exhausted half the time, because I really do believe showing up is important, number one. Number two, as a woman in elected office, we need to go above and beyond and do more than the men. I don't know how many times you've seen, oh, this guy is great, but we never see him. Yet this person you see all the time, and you don't even talk as highly about that person as this other person who is mysterious, right? But that's how women are. We just have to accept that. And I got to spend a lot more time with my father. My mom passed away 2.5 years ago, and I was feeling very guilty because I wasn't home a lot. And so being able to spend more time with him, and also watching a lot of Korean dramas. I love Korean dramas, like you, binge watching all weekend long. And I got my dad into it as well. And so we were able to spend some quality time with each other. And I think that's what we're learning about the pandemic, is that we don't have to necessarily always show up. This is showing up. This is communicating, right? This is actually saving a lot of our time, not having to be in an airplane or sitting in traffic, but we're still able to connect with each other. And so having this hybrid way of meeting, I hope will continue, because I feel like I've been able to see and hear and connect with more people than less by doing this virtually. So I don't know about you. What do you feel, Tammy?
Well, I was going to tell you, I feel like it's opened a door, like you were talking about communication. And you know this, that you just said, sometimes you would fly somewhere and be there for 10 minutes or half an hour, right? But I think it's really forced me to be more efficient with my time, right? To be able to create the same kind of impact and not have to be there in person is something I feel like I've been able to do, but it's more acceptable now. And I would say, particularly because this is about women in power, I think so often, Treasurer, women are balancing all of the things that nobody ever talks about, right? These unseen responsibilities, like planning doctor's appointments, whether it was for your mom or your children. And I feel like now it was like, you all get to see it. You know what? If I'm going to have my child interrupt me, you all get to see what my life is like, right? For better or worse. And I feel like hopefully that opens up the door for conversations about how we support working families, dad, moms, or whatever that could look like. So
yeah, and going to events. I mean, if you have children to take care of or parents, you can't necessarily hop in a car, go for 3 hours to downtown, pay for the ticket, pay for parking. And this virtual world allows more people to access. And I really appreciate that, because I think more older people who can't always get out, people maybe with disabilities, you know, people who don't want to drive at night, and others that have other obligations, to be able to continue to join in these celebrations and these events virtually.
100%. And I would say particularly, and maybe to close out, Treasurer, in our communities where I think, like you said, and as a woman, you have to do double, triple, whatever it takes, the white corporate CEO to do what he does.
Yep.
I'm curious if we can close out on what were some of those kind of conflicts culturally maybe that you faced, right? So I think as Asian Americans, we're, like I mentioned earlier, we're told not to make waves, right? We're told not to really stick out there. And yet if you're running for office, you need to know and speak to what you stand for. You need to be able to call out your opponent and what they don't and what you bring to the table. And these are not muscles that I think either as women or as Asian Americans that we are taught to exercise. And so I'd love for you to close out with any thoughts you have on times you had to use that extra muscle that you have inside you, but maybe didn't always see you. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, like, I am comfortable reading financial statements, looking at numbers all day long, and I can pretty much pick out whether a company or a nonprofit or an individual is, doing well or not. But I was not taught public speaking. So when I first ran for my first office, I had to read off a script, and it's very difficult to connect with people when you have to read off a script. So that's something I don't think we are taught to be, what is that speech, the debate prep, organizations. I think if you're a young person or you have an opportunity to, participate in Carnegie Mellon, or what is that, the debate team in junior high or high school, you should take that opportunity, because a lot about life is about public speaking. Number two, I was not used to talking about myself all the time and saying how great I am. Look at me, I'm Fiona Ma. I'm like, straight A student. I play sports. I'm amazing. Like, you should recognize me, right? We were taught to keep your head down, work hard, get straight A's, don't make waves, like you said. And then thirdly, we are not used to asking people for money. That is not part of our culture, right? And so having to go out and say, hey, Tammy, I'm running for office. Can you donate $100 to me? When hey, maybe they're struggling, or, that's just not easy to ask for yourself. You may be able to ask for cause or another individual, but asking for yourself is something that I think is very difficult as Asian Americans. So we have to kind of retrain ourselves, right, to do what we need to be successful in whatever career we decide, but we can do it in our own way. We don't have to be like another community where we are out there with our fists pounding, or out there, behind a podium, rallying and shouting, because that's not our community. Our community is not like that. But what do? We prepare, right? We put together our resume, we plan. So talk about all the things that we've done, right? Talk about our educational experiences, why we're prepared for the job. And when you have to call out someone, I do it. I don't like it. I don't like confrontation. That is not my strong point. But if someone is continually pounding me, insulting me, lying about me, I will have to say something, but I'll say it in a nice way where people will know that, Fiona's really nice. She smiles all the time, but she's really pissed off, and it's going to motivate me to work even harder. So that's what I always say, don't piss me off. You piss me off, I'm going to work double hard, and I'm going to strategize. But in politics, it's kind of like a chess game, right? You have to plan your next move. You're playing against other players. Where are they going to move? Where are you going to move? And also musical chairs. You hope that when the music stops, that you have a chair to run, to go and sit down in. And that's kind of like politics. So you always have to be planning. You can't just wait and let things happen, right? Anything you want and love and care about in life, you need to devote 110% and look for mentors, like me, I'm available, I'm open, I will always and accessible, and I will always give you my best advice. And to the extent that you are thinking about a life in politics, I have to say it is a very satisfying career. It is my passion. It is my purpose in life. I don't want to do anything else, but it's clearly not for everyone. But give me a chance, and maybe I can convince you that you also could be successful. Tammy Bowie, we're waiting for you.
Oh my goodness, Treasurer, putting me on the spot. I was going to say to you, I trust and hope the music does not run out anytime soon for you. You have a community of people who will continue to support you. We look up to you. And I also would say that we owe it to you, right? We owe it to the leaders like you who have paved the path to keep it moving forward. So thank you. This was a lot of fun. I hope you had as much fun as I did. And I look forward to being able to see you in person and give you a big hug next time I see you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Treasurer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Treasurer Ma and Tammy Bowie. Now to close out our event, we have a panel discussion with our two interviewers, Tammy Bowie and Tammy Tran. They will be joined by Irvine Vice Mayor Tammy Kim, who is a mother, a nonprofit leader, an educator, a community advocate, a small business owner, and former corporate executive who has lived, worked, and raised her son in Irvine for the past 2 decades. She was elected to Irvine City Council in November 2020 in a historic win, beating out 13 other candidates with the highest vote count for any city council candidate in the city's history. The conversation will be moderated by Diana Hwang from the Asian American Women's Political Initiative. Now I'll hand it over to Diana.
Thank you, Nancy. As Nancy said, I'm Diana Hwang. I'm the founder of the Asian American Women's Political Initiative, the country's only political leadership organization for AAPI women. And when I started it, a number of people in the community asked me, why just women? And the conversations we just saw, this panel we're about to jump into now, this is why. So thank you to Justine and Steve and Talia and Farah and Nancy, just for your leadership in pulling together events are like no joke. So all the logistics, we just have so much gratitude for you. I just want to say how honored I am to be with you, with these incredible panelists in this incredible space that Cause has created for us to talk about AAPI women in politics, AAPI women in leadership, AAPI women in power. And I'm particularly grateful because spaces like these are a lot more rare than they should be. And so I'm here with you from Boston, where it is 11:56 p.m. right now, because I needed this space. And so now we're lucky enough to be able to debrief with the three of you after Tammy Tran and Tammy Bowie's interviews with Congresswoman Kim and Treasurer Ma. So there were a couple of things that resonated pretty deeply with me. In Tammy Bowie's conversation with Treasurer Ma, there was a level of demystifying what it is to run for office, and also really honest talk about the unique challenges facing AAPI women candidates. And as part of a heavily immigrant community, AAPI women and men, honestly, weren't raised to brag about ourselves nonstop, which is what you have to do when you run. We weren't raised to ask for money for ourselves. I ran for state senate in Massachusetts in a district that included Boston's Chinatown. And I remember describing to someone how hard it was mentally for me as an AAPI woman to run for office, and raise money. And I gave the example of when my family went out with another family for dinner, we'd be fighting over who should keep the leftovers, right? It's like, no, you keep the leftovers. And they'd be like, no, you keep the leftovers, right? So I would say it was like I went up to the other family and said, so I'm going to take the leftovers and you owe me $1,000, right? And so essentially a lot of your time is spent doing all of these other things you have to do to run a strong campaign, when really I ran because I wanted to fight for Chinatown. And in Tammy Bowie's interview with Treasurer Ma, she essentially said that women who run for office, it often takes a long time to convince them to run. And then when they ultimately do, they really don't run for power, they run for our community and to make a difference. So Vice Mayor Kim, does that resonate with you? Could you talk a little bit about how you came to run for office and what got you to make that jump?
Yeah, Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here with all of you. So, I mean, it's not a simple story because it's actually, starts from just my upbringing and my roots. Being born in Korea and coming here as a child, from Korea with my parents, growing up in the East Coast in Flint, Michigan, and then in Baltimore, like so many immigrant families at that time, growing up, we struggled. My parents, my mom was a seamstress, and then my dad was a day laborer. And eventually they saved up to have a small business. But what that meant was that they worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week with no health insurance, no means of retirement savings, just in order to provide enough for my family and myself, my siblings. I eventually became the first person in my family to go to college, and then came out to California in my early 20s and moved my way up through the corporate ladder in various tech companies, eventually becoming the first Asian American female vice president of talent acquisition for a Fortune 500 company. And why I mention that is because I had aspirations to go to Washington. I had aspirations to, I studied public policy. I didn't have the means to have an internship and to do an internship, because to do an internship means I couldn't work at my parents' store. And they wouldn't have been able to go to the doctor because I wasn't working at their store, and then have my own job so I could put myself through college. And I needed to provide for myself and for my family. And that's really what it came down to. So I really put aside the community work that I wanted to do in order to work my way up the corporate ladder. So after having a successful corporate career and being able to lift up my family, I chose to pay it forward by investing my own resources in starting a nonprofit organization here in Irvine called the Korean American Center. And I started that as a way to reclaim our heritage as Korean Americans. And then we merged with Korean Community Services, a federally qualified healthcare center, eventually becoming one of the largest Asian American serving organizations in Orange County, and the primary social service agency for the over 100,000 Korean Americans in Orange County. And some of our programs includes pro bono immigration assistance, community wellness, mental health programs, Medicaid enrollment, language access, as well as being the primary care provider for the uninsured, the underinsured, and the DACA recipients. I also do a lot of community service. I was chair of the Language Access Committee for the Orange County Register of Voters, and did a whole lot of advocacy work. So my role and why I ran, and I give you all of that background, is because I wasn't running for myself. It was really to run for my community, to provide a voice to the voiceless, because there aren't enough people, and there aren't enough Asian Americans, and there certainly are not enough Asian American women, and then albeit progressive Asian American women, to run for office. And the fact that I was entrenched in our community and worked as a political operative here in Orange County, being part of the Democratic Party, understanding sort of the mechanisms and understanding sort of the machine behind the machine behind the machine, and having that knowledge really set me up to be able to run for office. I did not want to run for office. And many people can tell you, I was trying to look for the right candidates to run for office, and then supporting those people. And then it was just over and over again, it was, no, you should run. You are the one that should run for office. And finally, enough crazy people convinced me that, and that's what happened. So that is it in a nutshell. And there's obviously more to it and fill in the gaps, but it was really a means in order to help continue to advocate for our community.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that, Vice Mayor. And that's why Treasurer Ma was like, Tammy Bowie, just saying, you're up next, okay? Because women have to be asked. Women always look to someone else, but we are the leaders we are looking for. So we're really grateful that you got dragged kicking and screaming into running so that you are now Vice Mayor.
Well, it's also the other thing, just to add, it's please. The feeling of being unqualified. And that's that is the main thing, because I always thought I was not qualified.
And I think there's this thing that, like, this idea that imposter syndrome goes away, and it really never does, right? Like, it really never does. And it's like the idea that being brave is not feeling that way, but doing it anyways, right? So no, completely. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Tammy Bowie, you just, first of all, please run. Okay, I'm the second one to ask after Fiona just in this panel. But you just have experience in like everything, in corporate philanthropy, in higher education, in a number of roles in the state legislature, and now in the private sector as senior government affairs manager for Turo. So first, tell us about that path. Treasurer Ma was like, her parents wanted her to be a doctor, lawyer, engineering, accountant, and didn't want her to run because of the unknown and instability. And you created your own path and must have also taken your parents on a bit of a roller coaster ride. So if you could just tell us how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. And I also have to say, the imposter thing, you're right, it doesn't go away. But one thing that helps, I think, is having people like Vice Mayor Kim or Tammy Tran or you or people at Cause to remind you, what we are capable of, right? So I would say, don't underestimate, the people that you surround yourself with, and how when you are in doubt and you don't feel qualified or whatever that may be, the way to get through it is to have people tell you, no, you got this. You need to do it. So that's the first thing I would say, because you may never get over it. But if you have people who believe in you, you owe it to yourself and to them to do it. So, something that the Vice Mayor just said totally resonated with me. I was born in Vietnam. My parents and I were refugees. I was 7 months old when literally my dad got us on a boat, a rickety old boat. And, we arrived with the sponsorship of a family in Santa Ana in Orange County. So I share that to say, I think our story as Asian Americans and our path is an amazing one. And I think it inspires so many of us to do things because it's not about us, right? It's not about me. And when I am looking for a job and I have my parents who have talked to me about these careers that are much more stable in nature, they're not doing it to be selfish, right? They're doing it because they sacrificed a whole lot, right, for us to get here. And so I felt the weight oftentimes of choosing a more understandable career, right? Because they wanted to be able to tell, whether it's relatives in Vietnam or, family and friends, like, this is what my daughter does. Well, unfortunately, I don't think they ever have been able to do that. But I will say this, Diana, at the end of the day, I think culturally, that's why this muscle of that's why I brought up the formal versus informal, right? Because I think culturally as Asian Americans, we value education, right? We value, where did you go to school? How many degrees you have, to this day, I have a bachelor's, that's it. But you know what else I have? I have a whole lot of experience. I have a whole lot of people who have helped me, who have paved the path for me, right? And I know a whole lot more than the the white male who is willing to just say whatever comes out of his mouth. And when I was younger, I used to think, oh, I have to plan out my arguments, and I was afraid to ask for things because I thought it was just too much. And I didn't grow up having we did not have conversations. My parents talked to me. They did not ask me for my input. And so these things that I think culturally we grow up with do not set us up for this type of kind of battlefield that we're in, whether it's politics or corporate work culture. But I think politics is all around us. And I think one thing to keep in mind is, you heard the treasurer say that, work on your resume, work on the other thing I would add, it's the informal, it is the endorsement of individuals like Vice Mayor Kim, or the, Tammy Tran knows everybody. So, I have a story, and I'll close this up, which is that, I'm at Turo now because one day while I was sharing with her that I was, getting ready to move up north, I was at Cal State Fullerton, and Tammy said, "Oh, have you heard of Turo?" And then it turned out I knew somebody, we knew somebody at Turo. And then I also knew another person at Turo. And that happened because Tammy put that bug in my ear, right? And actually, I met Vice Mayor Kim when I was at Cal State Fullerton, and I remember, when I was younger, I was telling you how I used to be nervous about asking for things, right? I think we have to shift our mindset from asking to we add value when we come to the table with recommendations because we have experience. And companies need that. They need diverse perspectives. And if you come from a background where you can speak from that experience, you are not asking for anything. You are imploring them to do what they need to do. And so Vice Mayor Kim at that time came out and met with the president at the time at Cal State Fullerton, because Korean Americans make up a large community in the city of Fullerton. And so my younger self would have been like, oh, am I asking too much to have, the president meet with this community person? My associate VP self at that time said, he is so lucky he gets to meet with Vice Mayor Kim. She wasn't the vice mayor then, but how fortunate that he already developed a relationship before she became vice mayor. So I hope that answers your question, but I do think it's so magical how our paths always all seem to intersect.
No, Tammy, you just went in so many places. I was like, where do I go with you? I mean, one of the things that I would say that I've learned too is that relationships are everything, right? And I think and it's who you meet along the way and those relationships along the way that continue to propel you forward, right? So I think one of the questions I had for Tammy Tran is, so me and my best friend, who also started a political nonprofit, we send back and forth a screenshot of a card that says, behind every great woman is another great woman replying to a frantic text in the middle of the night, right? Which is pretty much the truest thing I've ever freaking heard, okay? And honestly, some of what you had said, Tammy, the way that I make it through all the tough times and the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome is surrounding myself by people and by people who I've honestly met in spaces like these, right? In politics and the work we do, that's what actually gets me through. So Tammy Tran, can you talk a little about, and this is our last question before we open it up so all of the fellows can ask, but can you talk a little bit about what gets you through the tough times and what can be a kind of a dog-eat-dog world of politics and sometimes in corporate as well?
No, absolutely. And it's everything that you all have said. Have a Tammy in your corner. Luckily for me, I have a Tammy Kim, a Tammy Boy, a Tammy Tumbling. But joking aside, I think that's so important. Exactly what you said. We don't do these things by ourselves, right? We didn't get to where we are by ourselves. Our parents didn't raise us by themselves, right? And so I feel like that's something that, for those that are following today that are part of the Leadership Institute, I mean, you are not by yourself. You're part of a cohort. You're part of the cause family. And I think that's something that you always have to remember every decision you make, every time you show up on a virtual screen or on a stage, or you walk into a room asking for money for your campaign, or you're looking for that next job or that opportunity. You're not alone. You can't do anything alone. Tammy and I think all of our different career moves have been tied to each other in some way. Either I call her for advice, or she pointed me in the right direction to somebody that helped me And I feel like that's something that we all, that's how you get through things, right? And then it's also something that's a passion for all of us, is to bring other people along the way. I mean, Tammy Kim talked about how people convinced her to run. She, not only is she running, she's also talking about getting other people to run. And that's something she and I will randomly call each other like, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to get the money to do this? How are we going to get people to do this? And I think that's what drives us. At the end of the day, we all have our day jobs, but what is amazing is that this kind of, common thread that runs through all of us, right? That we want to do something for others because others have done that for us. Like I am fully aware every single day, I'm not here because of just me alone. Obviously, I worked hard, I made my parents proud, but also because of people like Tammy Bui and Tammy Kim and Charlie Wu and others, and so many people, and especially the younger people too. Nowadays, now that I'm 40 officially, because last year I didn't get to turn 40, because of pandemic, everything stopped, right? So I think about my kids. I think of my daughter who's 7 years old. I think about the young people that go through the cause program, and we were all there once. Right. And there were several people, many people that took the time to talk to us, that took the time to introduce us to somebody. And I think about my years, nothing would have happened had it not been for someone, and many times API, right, or a person of color. So I don't think I would have to struggle to think about what white male person really went out of the way to help me. But I think it's all been people of color. And I think that's why programs like this is so important. And the main thing is we have to stay connected, because you never know how conversations or how someone within our networks can help us get to the next level or help someone else, right? And then ultimately make a big difference, in the things that we care about, whether it's stopping Asian hate or more API representation. There's so many things that are very lofty and broad, but at the end of the day, it's about the connections and how do we leverage those connections.
Thank you so much for that, Tammy. Just to it's the day-to-day, it's the person, like that's how you make this broad change.
Yes.
So fellows, it's your turn. Do you have questions for these three incredible women? And it can range. I mean, if not, I've got like 12 more questions, so I could just take over, but I'm giving everyone a shot here.
It looks like Jen is ready for a question. You want to go ahead, Jen?
Yes, thanks so much. Thanks for everyone. Loved it. I have a question for Vice Mayor Tammy Kim, who I'm obsessed with, Irvine represent. But a question for you, because I actually told all my pod group this already, that I had never really been involved in politics until I started phone banking for you and Farrakhan and Irvine. One thing that I noticed now that I've actually been watching city council meetings is you really have to do it all. Like every issue, like every little complaint that or passion area that a resident has, like you have to deal with it. And I was wondering if you could just talk through, like, how do you prioritize the issues that you want to work on? Like, is it, even before the campaign, like you knew what your passion areas were and you really kind of focus on that? Is it you just follow the political environment and you think about what can you move the needle on? Is it depending on how many complaints you get from city? There's a lot of Irvine drama. So like, I was just wondering, how do you just decide and what to focus your limited time on?
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because at the municipal level, like you've got so many like watchdogs and so many different like really hyper local groups who are like watching your every move at every time. So that's an interesting thing versus Congress or, in the state legislature. So, but in terms of priority, I have a list and set of priorities that are important to me and what I hope to move the needle on. And also the immediate things that I was able to do the moment I was elected was to really fill voids that I saw and noticed as it pertained particularly to the API community. Number one, that of language access. That number two, diversity in hiring within not only our city, but with the Irvine Police Department, and making sure that we have a community that we have a police department and a public safety department that reflects our community. Another thing that I did, again, right off the bat, my first real city council meeting, was to make sure and mandate that the city of Irvine kept track of hate crimes and hate incidents that were happening, particularly against the API community, because they were not keeping track of that. So these were things that would not have happens because you have that representation and you have that passion for the community to make things happen. So you tackle off those priorities in the voids that like the gaping voids, and then you work towards, there's things that are going to be a lot more longer term. Like I cannot find a immediate solution to our affordable housing crisis or sustainability, but you work on those bit by bit to make sure that things can happen incrementally. So for example, when there's a land use opportunity and you're talking to a developer around land use, then you can push that person or that developer into creating more affordable housing opportunities. And and to your other point, yes, there are a myriad of things that one must really pay attention to. And, when it comes to federal versus the things that you worry about at the state, at the local level, yes, I get hate mail around potholes and stop signs. And that's, people are very passionate about it. And what I need to do is I need to figure out how we're going to get a stop sign when you've got lots of residents or potholes or trees or barking dogs or, noisy cars. So, yep, I deal with all of that, plus the bigger issues and everything in between. But, the thing is, when you really like what you're doing and you're really passionate about your community, it's okay. Fun is maybe not the right word, but you have a sense of fulfillment. And that's what I have. And that's what keeps me going. And that's what keeps me motivated. And that's what keeps me going here. And, I had a city council meeting that didn't end until 11:30 last night. And then I showed up at a 7:30 a.m. Rotary meeting because I was a guest speaker at 7:30 this morning for breakfast. And then I'm here now, but it's because of just the passion that I have to serve. And you have to have that. Versus whether you're an introvert, extrovert, because trust me, I have my moments of K-drama too, which is every day, that I just cuddle and watch K-dramas. And I have moments of being an introvert, but it's really about just wanting to serve. And that's what it comes down to. Not wanting to be a politician. I don't want to be a politician, but I do want to serve.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thanks, Jen. And by the way, Jen is one of my appointees because that is what you do. You help bring people up. You help bring your community up by giving them appointments. So I can go on and I'll just stop right there.
Thank you, Jen, for that question. And thank you for serving. Marlena, you're up next, and then we have time for one more question. So if anyone else wants to close us out, but Marlena, take it away.
Marlena.
Hi, it's nice to see you again. When I heard you were going to be on the panel, I was like, oh, yeah, cool. So my question is for anyone and everyone, any of the panelists, kind of around this idea of developing thick skin. So I've been through like some NWPC trainings as someone who does want to run for office at some point. And, they tell you when it comes to the nasty comments and the kind of some of the things that Tammy Kim, that you were kind of referencing, the angry emails and things like that, like how how do you develop thick skin in any kind of professional setting, whether it's politics or in the corporate world? How do you do that? And kind of what you touched on, Tammy, is, what do you tell yourself to keep yourself going?
I'll answer that just real quick. And by the way, this panel should have been retitled the Tammy panel, because you have like we might be Guinness Book of how many Tammys on one panel. Just
I'm the odd one out. Like, I'm like, could you not find a moderator named Tammy? Like, that was a cause fail. Go ahead. Sorry.
But yeah, so developing the thick skin, I think developing thick skin is important throughout your career. So in a professional capacity, especially, I worked with a lot of men. I worked with all white men, and that was my entire career. In technology, primarily revenue generating positions like chief revenue officers and all those customer facing people. It's like a fraternity. But that's a different story for a different time. And you develop thick skin there, but the political realm is a completely different animal, and you just have to tune it out. If you get stuck in social media and you read every Facebook comment, you will be in a world of depression. And every hate email you get and everything that says go back to China, go back to North Korea, which I've gotten, you have to let it go. And you have to go through that exercise in your own mind to be able to let it go, because that is the hardest part, especially in local politics, where things get so personal so fast. And you have to put yourself in almost like a Zen-like mental state, and put a shield on, because it will happen. And I would say it's that two things: fundraising, thick skin. Those are the two things in politics, especially at the local level, that you have to develop. And I'll let one of the other, either TT, which we call Tammy Tran, or Bowie, if you guys have any thoughts on that.
And it's in politics. I mean, it's a question that obviously politics is the most outward facing, right? But I think it's a good question for just all of the careers that you are in. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Vice Mayor said and add just two other thoughts. One is that, Marlena, that's awesome that you want to run for office. Two, I would say, developing thick skin is also more about knowing what you stand for, right? So no matter what happens, you know why you're going to run for office, and you know what you stand for. So I am sure, like Vice Mayor Kim is talking about, she gets, whether it was her own family who questioned her decision, or, or other people who say, why are you there? I should be there, right? That is going to happen all the time. But I think, Marlena, whether it's for political office or for positions, if you do not believe in yourself first and foremost, why should anybody else? So when you're asking for money, and you're coming from a place of, like Vice Mayor Kim is saying to herself, she is not doing this to be a political figure, right? She is doing this on behalf of her community. So I think kind of reshifting how we think of this. I mean, it's really an act of sacrifice, frankly, for people to run for office, because she's up at 7:30. She's doing this now. We only all have 24 hours in a day. And so I feel like if you can spend the time knowing what you stand for, then you have to be your own biggest fan, right? That's how I see it. So I think the antidote to the ability to develop thick skin, can also just come from you believing that you've got what it takes. Even if sometimes you have bad days, you have to know what you stand for.
And I think it's also back to some of the things we were talking about earlier, right? Like, behind every great woman is another great woman who frantically asks your test. Like, you have to surround yourself by support, because you're going to have a low day. It's just going to happen, right? And what are those things that you do in those moments? And it's remind yourself about why you're doing it, right? Like, I had someone once tell me that you have to have a fire in the belly in order to run, because it's going to be so hard. You're going to be tired. You know, you're asking everyone for everything. The one thing you have to just be very grounded in why you're doing it. And also surround yourself by people who you can like literally go cry to and then wipe your tears and then go to an event and be on, right? So I think it's a number of tools, and like, we're all human. I think the best way I describe running for office now is you have to be vulnerable to connect with people, but you're also a thing, right? And the thing is the hate mail and the, right? like you're not human, you're not. So, but it's developing these tools and like a community who will lift you up and friends who will be there for you. So I know Annie may have a question, and Tammy Tran, hopefully you can jump in and answer it for her if she's still interested. Yes, Annie? No,
Yeah,
Annie?
hi.
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay off of video because my connection is extremely bad.
No.
But yeah, so thank you to all the Tammys. I really appreciated everything that you guys mentioned. But I think one of the things that really resonated with me was what Tammy and Bowie mentioned in terms of, you know, when you're about to ask for something and you're doubting whether you should because it may be too much. It's really, you have to kind of recalibrate yourself and say, you know, no, it's about us adding value. It's not us asking for favors. And I'm just wondering, like, I think being in the politics field for a while, you know, you start to learn about those things, but then you get into these moments where you start doubting yourself. Absolutely. And so I was just wondering, you know, when you're in that situation, to all the Tammys, when you guys are in those situations, like, what do you do? At what point did you feel that you weren't doubting? Like, did you ever get to that point? Or is it that, you know, you just go through these phases?
Hi, Annie. I see a lot of Orange County folks on here, so so shout out to our Orange County friends. I think the doubt, I think we talked about this other about imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away, right? The doubt doesn't go away. In fact, we doubt ourselves because we strive for perfection. We strive for excellence. And so I think the key thing is, and what I've learned, I mean, I'm naturally an introvert, and I'm going to do a quick plug here. Tammy Bowie and I have a podcast called Women in Power series. It's called the Leap Podcast.
Yes, we named the series after the podcast. This is amazing.
Yes,
Go
yes, exactly. I feel like it goes back to what we've been talking about. You're not alone. You can't be alone. Nobody gets anywhere by themselves. The moment you doubt something, you better have 5 or 6 other people, or at least one person that you call to kind of talk through that. And so what you need to do, Annie, or what, you know, we all need to do is to, you know, whenever we have that doubt, pick up the phone and call it Tammy. So call me, or call me Tammy Bowie, or call Tammy Kim. Like, that's what we need to do. I have doubted myself. There are days I still do. And you know, I'll send a text, you know, like, you know, and things like that. And the other thing is to support other women. I think, and this is where I'm just grateful for the friendships I have, is, you know, you want to be vulnerable. You want to make sure that you talk about what you're worried about, the things that you want to do. You share it with your network, and people will step up for you, even without you asking. And I think that's what I think about is there have been plenty of people that have stepped up for me that I know have had my back when I'm not in the room. And so then what I do is I do the same for other women, even women I meet for the first time, just by way of introduction. I know this person is connected to Tammy or connected to Nancy or whoever it is. I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to support that person however I can. And you never know how you can do that, you know, by facilitating an introduction or singing someone's praises. And so, Annie, you know what I'm talking about, right? We all doubt ourselves, but we need to make sure that we voice that doubt, right? And don't keep that to ourselves.
Thank you, Tammy. Because I think there is always this perception that confident appearing women just like have no doubts, right? And I think that's not honest, right? And so I think it's, yeah, go ahead, Tammy.
I bet everybody's nodding as we're talking about these things, right? We've all been there. This is nothing new, and this is not something that will go away, right? So I feel like give voice to that doubt and make sure that you have someone that will hear you, right? And make sure that you surround yourself with people that will not only hear you out, but will help you walk you through that. I mean, I think all of us on the screen have had doubts. We continue to have doubts, but we also are are very confident in the fact that we have people that will, you know, tick our calls, will answer our texts, will be there and have our backs when we're not in the room.
And honestly, I would prefer to be friends and work with and elect someone who has doubts than a narcissist who walks around thinking they're like walking on water, right? Like I think it's the vulnerability and those doubts actually make us better. So don't also feel that it's something you need to get rid of, I think is also the thing. So thank you to the three of you.
I just have one thing to add about doubt, self-doubt. And the imposter syndrome is so real. And I just want to give us an example of what happened. I mean, I doubt myself a lot, so no surprise. I think we all, well, many of us do. But when I won my election, I thought perhaps, did the registrar of voters make a mistake? I literally thought that. And I thought, am I supposed to be here? And this is, I mean, so we all experience this to different degrees at every time.
Thank you for sharing that, because honestly, right, like you're vice mayor, you can't possibly have any doubts. So, so thank you for that. And just she didn't, clearly, thank God she didn't. But so I'm just gonna hand it back to Nancy. I want to thank the three of you. It's been really energizing for me just to be in this space with you and kind of just taking your sisterhood. So thank you for this. Thank you to Cause and the staff, and go for it, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. And just for sharing your thoughts. And I think just genuine friendship and openness to what that means in all its ways. I feel like I've really benefited from conversations with so many of you, and so excited that there are so many Tammys in my life. I feel like this is just one example of how that can play out. And if you're all comfortable, I think we want to make sure that our Cause Leadership Institute fellows are able to reach out to all of you should they have any additional questions. Thank you. And so we'll be sure to share that over with them. And on that note, we are going to start to close out this event. I do want to invite the Cause Leadership Institute fellows to turn on their cameras so we could do a group photo in the way that virtual group photos are happening now, and also our board members. And so just to recognize a few of our board members that are here, including Tammy Bowie and Tammy Tran. We also have Charlie Wu here. Ben Hwang is here. And I'm looking to see, I think we have a few others. I know Victor King is here, as well as Robert Yap. And so if I'm forgetting anyone, please feel free to voice in, but everyone who's able to, please turn on your cameras, and I'll hand it over to Farah on the Cause team to count us down for some photos. Great, thank you, everyone. And just some quick thank yous to Congresswoman Kim and Treasurer Ma, Vice Mayor Kim, Tammy Bowie, Tammy Tran, Diana Hwang. Thank you all for coming and speaking today. Thank you to the Cause board members, the Leadership Institute fellows, our staff, Steve, Justine, Talia, and Farah. We do want to say 2 of our programs are actually ending this month. So the Cause Leadership Academy for the students, they'll be having their graduation on Friday the 20th at 12 o'clock. And the Leadership Institute will be graduating on August 25th. And so please RSVP. We're sending out some great care packages in support of small businesses. And so just really excited to have had everybody here today. Thank you so much, everyone. I know the Leadership Institute, we're going to close out in Gathertown, but thank you, everyone. And we're looking forward to our next event. And hopefully you'll join us.